The nation's largest credit union rejected more than half its black conventional mortgage applicants. What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name's Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, filming this video on December 24th, 2023, out here in Budapest, Hungary. It's your resident broke boy out here to read about business and money, more money than I've ever had, because as you know, I don't have two pennies to rub together. But we're going to be delving into this story. This is a story that my wife sent me. She thought it would be very interesting to read on my channel. Before we delve into it, let's first get two things clear. What is a credit union? I even had to look this up. So the main difference between the two, which is a conventional bank and a credit union, is that banks are typically for-profit institutions, while credit unions are not-for-profit and distribute their profits among their members. Credit unions also tend to serve a specific region or community. So to keep it more clear, banks are out there to make money, and credit unions in general are nonprofits meant to distribute money and to just essentially break even, not to make a profit and make everybody rich. But as we know, in America, capitalism it rules the land, and everybody's out there to make a penny. So let's get into how they reported this story. And this is at the very end of the article, but I wanted to read this part first before we jump into the body of the text, because it's important to realize how they source this data, how they analyze this data, and how they compiled this article. So let's get into it. How we reported this story. CNN analyzed data on millions of mortgage applications to evaluate racial disparities in lending at Navy Federal Credit Union and other lenders. The data was released by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau under the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, and CNN used the snapshot data for 2022 and prior years. Reporters analyzed conventional first lien 1 to 4 unit conforming home purchase loan applications. The review only included mortgages for homes intended to be used for a primary residence and not intended to be used for a business or commercial purpose. Applications that were not fully submitted and acted upon were excluded. CNN statistical analysis evaluated the likelihood of applicants of each racial and ethnic group being denied when more than a dozen other variables were held constant. The other variables, all of which are included in the HMDA dataset, were the applicant's income, the applicant's debt to income ratio, the loan amount, the loan term, the loan to value ratio, the property value, the presence of a co-applicant, the applicant and co-applicant sex, the credit scoring model used to generate why did I say generate? The credit scoring model used to generate the applicant's credit score, the primary applicant's age, the minority population percentage of the property's census tract, the median age of housing units in the property's census tract, and the difference between the median income of the metro area and the median income of the property's census tract. So how I'm understanding this text, and keep in mind, I am a broke boy who has never applied for a mortgage, never had a car loan, anything like that. But how I'm understanding this data is that they got it from public information. Basically, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau gave them this data, and then they analyzed it up until 2022. So it doesn't include 2023. So maybe, possibly, and I don't work for the bank. The bank didn't send me any money, but if they do, you can send it to my PayPal in the description of this video. But maybe the bank might have changed in 2023, but it's not likely when we look at their past performance. How they came to this data, how they analyzed it, they were looking at people trying to buy their first home, primary residence home, that sort of stuff. They were looking at the other things that are related to purchasing a home, such as liens, 1 to 4 units, different things like that. Applications that were not fully submitted and acted upon were excluded. Okay, so this is important because I heard on Roland Martin's show, they talked to some black banker guy, and he said sometimes it can look like an application was denied when the person did not complete the application. But actually, what they did in this data, they did not include people who didn't complete their applications. So this is for applications that were fully done, submitted, meant to be underwritten, and then they got rejected. Okay, and so then they compared the data by taking out or analyzing the variables. I'm not a scientist like this, but how I'm understanding it is that they looked at all the things that would make somebody be accepted or rejected, and then applied that to a whole range of people and how that acted upon the black applicants. So with all the other things held in control, they saw that the black applicants had a different set of outcomes. Okay, the analysis classified applicants as Latino if they reported Latino ethnicity, no matter their race. Mixed race applicants and applications from co-applicants or of different races or ethnicities were excluded from the racial categories. Alternate methods of defining race and ethnicity, such as looking only at the demographics of the primary applicant and not any co-applicants, did not substantially change the results. You know, I just got accepted into a university here in LTED to study sociology, and I will be taking statistics and studying this sort of science. So maybe, you know, in about 3, 4, 5 years, I'll have a better grasp of this data and I'll have more information to relay on that. But as of right now, I'm giving my real honest opinion on this text as we read it. I did not read it before. This was published on December 14th, 2023. There's a video accompanying it, but I will not be playing it. Let's read the text. The largest credit union in the U.S. has the widest disparity in mortgage approval rates between white and black borrowers of any major lender, a trend that reached new heights last year, a CNN analysis found. Navy Federal Credit Union, which lends to military service members and veterans, approved more than 75% of the white borrowers who applied for a new conventional home purchase mortgage in 2022. According to the most recent data available from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, but less than 50% of black borrowers who applied for the same type of loan were approved. See, that's a shame. And this goes to show that white supremacy does exist, disparate outcomes do exist, and we need to modify our society to try to make things more equal, because, you know, I'm pretty sure black people who are applying for loans had the same or better credit scores, had good jobs where they had long history at their jobs, stable income, yet and still they were denied. Who can tell us that white supremacy does not exist? While many banks also approved white applicants at higher rates than black borrowers, the nearly 29 percentage point gap in Navy Federal's approval rate was the widest of any of the 50 lenders that originated the most mortgage loans last year. The disparity remains even among white and black applicants who had similar incomes and debt-to-income ratios. Notably, Navy Federal approved a slightly higher percentage of applications from white borrowers making less than $62,000 a year than it did of black borrowers making $140,000 or more. Wow. So even with six figures, white borrowers, we have to make this absolutely clear because a lot of people turn off the video after the 1 minute mark, 2 minute mark, 3 minute mark. If you don't get anything out of this video, let's get this absolutely clear. I'm talking to you watching this video right now. White people who made 5-figure income, $62,000 a year on average, still got approved for loans more than black people making six figures, almost double the amount that they were making. That's insane. Wow. I'm going to read that again just to make that absolutely clear. The disparity remains even among white and black applicants who had similar incomes and debt-to-income ratios. Notably, Navy Federal approved a slightly higher percentage of applications from white borrowers making less than $62,000 a year than it did of black borrowers making $140,000 or more. Think about that. A deeper statistical analysis performed by CNN found that black applicants to Navy Federal were more than twice as likely to be denied as white applicants, even when more than a dozen different variables, including income, debt-to-income ratio, property value, down payment percentage, and neighborhood characteristics, were the same. So even with everything being the same, even with everything equal, debt to income ratio, how much debt you have compared to how much money you make, property value, how much the property you want to buy is valued, down payment percentage, are you going to put 10% or 15% down on this, $500,000 home? Neighborhood characteristics, I don't even think that should be considered, but maybe, I don't know if they're talking about like what type of people live in the neighborhood or whether this is a neighborhood that has a homeowners association or whether this is a urban area versus a rural area, that sort of stuff. But even with all those things being the same across the board, white applicants still got more approval. What what does that show you? What does that show you? See, a lot of the times the white supremacists come in my comments, and maybe you hear them yourself if you're a black person. They say y'all need to work harder, or America got rid of systemic racism in the 1960s, and there's no barriers for people anymore, and that sort of stuff. Then how come we continue to see these things, even when black people be excellent, even when black people follow the rules to the T, even when they do exactly as the dominant society says that we need to do? What still happens? What still happens? We have disparate outcomes, and that needs to change. But it's a telltale sign that our society is unfair to black life. So the Virginia-based Navy Federal, which was originally founded in 1933 to serve Navy employees, is now open to all members of the Armed Forces, Department of Defense personnel, veterans, and their relatives. It has about 13 million members and more than $165 billion in assets. That's a lot of money. See, they can give out that money, man. They can give out that money. If you got 165 billion that you're playing with, you got enough to gamble with. Some people are going to say, oh, they can't gamble with their money. The banks have to be conservative and that sort of stuff. They're not being very conservative when they give it to White Derek shows up making less than $62K a year, and he can still get approved. Meanwhile, me, with my handsome melanated self making six figures a year, could possibly still get denied, while Derek walks out with a check. Anyway, Bob Atondi, a black business owner in Texas who was denied a mortgage by Navy Federal in 2021 and then approved by another lender in about 2 weeks, said the rejection didn't make any sense at all. I thought it could have been racial discrimination, he told CNN, but I could never prove it. So let's talk about this. Bob Atondi possibly, very possibly, is an immigrant, right? And so a lot of people might read this article and say, why are they lumping in, the black immigrants with black American struggles? Because on this channel, we're concerned with all black life, but the particular issues that black Americans face, such as being a people dispossessed, being a people descendant of people who built America and never were compensated, therefore we want reparations and that sort of stuff. We have a particular set of interests and concerns that need to be addressed that do not include the black immigrants. That does not mean we hate on black immigrants, but that means that we have different concerns. But what this does show to the black immigrants and also to us is that we are all in this boat together. So we do have to get along, at least in the fight against white supremacy. So I don't want anybody to walk away from this video thinking that, they're pulling out tethers and all sorts of stuff to make their point. Sure, they're pulling out a Nigerian guy named Bob who got denied because the loan officer was racist. Okay, we got that part out the way. But doesn't that prove even more that white supremacy is affecting all of our people? And even if guys like Bob Atondi vote for Trump or vote Republican or have talking points saying that all black Americans are lazy and that sort of stuff, Sure, he could think that. But the point is, the white supremacists don't care about Bob's ideology. They don't care about us and our diaspora wars and all that sort of stuff. What they do care about is hoarding wealth to their community, making sure our community or our people stay economically dispossessed, and the reason for that is to sustain the system of white supremacy to some extent. Going to jump ahead. In total, the credit union rejected about 3,700 black applicants for home purchase mortgages last year, potentially blocking them from home ownership just as interest rates spiked. And Navy Federal also approved Latino borrowers at significantly lower rates than white borrowers. I'm sorry, guys. I pronounce borrowers like that. There's no other way for me to do it. Blame my Louisiana accent or whatever weird accent you want to slap onto me. So, Navy Federal Credit Union's lending disparity between black and white applicants is greater than that of other large mortgage lenders. In a statement, Navy Federal spokesperson Bill Pearson defended the credit union's lending practices. Navy Federal Credit Union is committed to equal and equitable lending practices and strict adherence to all fair lending laws, Pearson said. Employee training, fair lending statistical testing, third-party evaluations, and compliance reviews are embedded in our lending practices to ensure fairness across the board. Pearson said that CNN's analysis does not accurately reflect our practices because it did not account for major criteria required by any financial institution to approve a mortgage loan. These factors included credit score, available cash deposits, and relationship history with lender. Okay, that's a very interesting point, and maybe I'll give him credit for that. If they studied this and those factors didn't include credit score, cash availability, and that sort of stuff, Maybe this could be skewed, but let's read more into it before we give our opinion. But that information is not available in the public mortgage data. Navy Federal declined to release additional data about its loans to CNN that included borrowers' credit scores or other variables. In addition, most of the Navy Federal applications that were denied are listed as being rejected for reasons other than credit history. So if it really was credit, by the way, Equifax and Experian and all these companies, they're like a sick cartel. And honestly, they need to be broken up and we need to redo the credit system because it's absolutely unfair. And I checked my credit score a few weeks ago. I think it's okay. I don't know. I think it's right around the 650 or something like that. I don't know if that's probably below the average American's credit score. But then again, I don't live in America, so I don't care. And unfortunately, so many Americans are locked out of economic opportunity just because of having low credit scores. You can't even get an apartment or a job in some places if you don't have a good credit score. And that's not okay. Because as we know, credit scores are often defined by how much income you make, and our people are locked out of economic opportunity. So it's sort of like a evil cyclical loop that we're caught in, where if you don't have good credit, you can't improve your credit because you can't get the money to fix your credit and that sort of stuff. Anyway, most of the loans are not approved, not because of credit history, because of other factors. And let's read into that. So by some measures, Navy Federal has been successful at lending to minority borrowers. A fourth of its conventional mortgage applicants are black, and about 18% of the conventional loans that originated went to black borrowers, a larger portion than almost any other large lender. But because of the large racial disparity in Navy Federal's approval rates, even though more black borrowers are applying for conventional mortgage loans from the credit union, most of them are getting denied. Experts in mortgage lending and advocates for fair housing said the racial gaps in Navy Federal's approval rates were surprisingly large and raised questions about the institution's lending practices. Lisa Rice, the president and CEO of the National Fair Housing Alliance, an advocacy group, said the racial gaps in Navy Federal's lending identified by CNN were some of the largest I've ever seen, or the largest I've seen. Anyway, that is a quite stark disparity, Rice said. It's unusual for us to see instances where the lender denies more loans than it approves. See? I mean, it's becoming more and more obvious. And honestly, I wish sometimes I had a co-host on my channel who was a blatant or open white supremacist who would try to debate or debunk these articles, who would read them with me, because it's so obvious and in your face now how systemic the anti-black racism is in America when we continue to have instances like this. And everybody who's commenting on this story is saying that, yeah, there's no reason for this bank to deny so many black borrowers unless it was systemic systemically racist. Going to continue here. So experts said that Navy Federal's racial disparities appeared to be an especially extreme example of a larger national problem. The credit union's gap between white and black approval rates has jumped significantly in recent years, and among all lenders, the racial approval rate gap has also grown. More broadly, the gap in home ownership rates between white and black Americans is larger today than it was before the civil rights era. And it's a key driver of wealth disparities between white and black families. I'm very lucky that my family, my black family, owns their own home, and they continue to dwell in that home. And, hopefully in the future, it will be a place that they can retire and, generate income for them if they need to tap into that wealth in retirement age. But unfortunately, a lot of black people don't have that opportunity. A lot of us left the South during the Great Migration when racial animus in that region of the country was violently high. And a lot of us abandoned those homes. A lot of us, pay for rent or lease apartments or lease homes and that sort of stuff. And those aren't ways to generate wealth and that sort of stuff. And definitely buying a home is something that I want to do. But I can't imagine going back to violent, crazy, Wild West America and getting denied for a loan, even if I work my butt off and make millions of dollars being on YouTube or teaching English or starting a company or being a professor in university, all the dreams that I have. I couldn't imagine getting that rejection just because of some loan officer who doesn't like the complexion of my skin telling me that, you know what, Mr. Hill, you don't have the right cultural fit. You're not the right cultural fit to move into this neighborhood. And your credit, even though it's stellar, it's just not good enough. You don't have long enough credit history and that sort of stuff. It's sad. In other countries it's not like that. I've lived in some very nice apartments, lived in some very nice neighborhoods, and all I had to do was pay the deposit first month, last month, put the money up, and you moved in. It's been very easy for me abroad generally. I've been having a pretty good time finding decent housing like the one I'm in right now. It's not the best. It's not swanky. It's not two bedrooms with a jacuzzi in the back or anything like that. But hey, it's cool. It's cool. I can at least afford to take care of myself, put a roof over my head and my wife's head, food in the fridge and that sort of stuff. Meanwhile, in America, I probably would have to live in Section 8 or in the slums just because my credit history isn't good or because of my criminal history. I told y'all guys before, I caught a charge before. Everybody's been through that, or at least that's the coping mechanism I do. But yeah, you get what I'm saying? Everybody's been caught up in jams before, yet and still, I would probably not be able to make it to where I want to make it or live where I want to live despite how hard I work in the United States of America. And I'm not just trying to tell myself this to make myself feel better or to validate some negative experience. It's because we have stories like this so often in our face of black men, black women, black families not being able to dwell in habitat and inhabit the places they want to live. Sorry, I was ranting. Let me get back into the text. Navy federal members says rejection left him feeling shocked and hurt. When Bob Otondi went house hunting in the summer of 2021, he immediately knew when he found his dream house. The three-bedroom home in a lakeside neighborhood of a Dallas suburb had an open kitchen, an expensive backyard with a pool, and most importantly, it was in a great school district where Otondi's son had long aspired to attend high school. Otondi was thrilled when he bid for the home. Tondi was thrilled when his bid for the home was approved and expected that his mortgage application with Navy Federal would be smooth sailing. The relative of Navy service members, Tondi had been a Navy Federal customer for years. The credit union had pre-approved him. He said he'd successfully paid off several previous Navy Federal vehicle loans, and he had budgeted a down payment of more than 20% of the home's value. But then just weeks before he was scheduled to close on the purchase, Tondi got bad news. Navy Federal was denying his application. The credit union told him in a form letter that it had concluded his income was not high enough to account for his debts. Otondi said the last-minute denial didn't make sense. According to documents he provided to CNN, he was making more than $100,000 a year from his logistics business and had a credit score above 700. He said he didn't have significant debts. In the heat of the pandemic-era housing market, Otondi feared he would lose the home. "I was stunned. I was shocked. I was hurt," he said. He had been driving by the house with his son and daughter every week, and the kids had already planned out decorations for their rooms. "To go back home and tell them, guys, we lost the house, I mean, devastating," Otondi said. So this guy's making 6K a year, 600, six figures a year. Sorry, guys, I'm so not used to big money, I can't even pronounce it. He's making more than 100K a year. Got a 700 credit score. Maybe he's got student loans on him. Maybe he's got loans he put under his own name to start his business. Or maybe he co-signed on his kids' college loans or something like that. Who knows what he's got baggage with him. But, he probably works very hard. He's an immigrant, probably Nigerian, probably got 2 or 3 jobs. And yeah, he could pay for that home, man. Let that man move into his house, man. Let that man move into his house. It's so crazy. Everybody's going to say, they don't want the 2008 financial crisis to happen again. When everybody started losing their homes because they couldn't pay for the homes that they got approved of because the bank was rubber stamping every application. So now they're going to be real strict on that. But they're not strict on the same banks that are doing those types of practices again. They just spoke about it earlier in this article. White guy making less than 60K a year gets approved for the loan. Now, doesn't that sound more dangerous than giving it to a black man who makes $140,000 a year, a black man with a 700 credit score, a black man who has paid off a loan for a car and that sort of stuff? I don't think that man sounds dangerous. He doesn't sound like bad paper. He doesn't sound like he's going to run off with the money. You get what I'm saying? But yet and still, we have these consequences. See, this is the thing, man. White supremacy is not even about economic domination over black people. Because honestly, they would make more money if they actually did business with us and not be racist in the way. Think about all the businesses during Jim Crow that could have made tons of money from black customers, but just because they were racist, they said a whole section of the country, 14% of Americans, couldn't eat at certain restaurants, couldn't stay at certain hotels, and that sort of stuff. Literally, it's just about sick power for them. There's like some white loan officer sitting at the desk getting Bob Atundi's application, sees the name, knows the man is Nigerian or something like that, and says, you know what? Oh, this just gets me rock hard, denying this, denying it. The same way I get hard when I block the white supremacists in the comments section. So I'm sympathetic towards that. I can feel that to some extent. But once again, white supremacy is just about sick domination over people, not even about anything financial, not about actual power. It's just about perceived power. This is how it works in their mind. Anyway, continuing here, but Atundi's realtor, Angela Crescini, connected him with another mortgage lender who approved him for a loan in about 2 weeks, and the purchase went through. There was no real reason he shouldn't have gotten the loan. From Navy Federal, Crescini said, how can one lender get a loan done within 15 days and this other one couldn't at all? It didn't ring right to me. So, Bob Atundi, a Texas business owner whose mortgage application was denied by Navy Federal, working at home. Yeah, he's still pissed off. Look at that face. He's like, man, the motherfuckers at Navy Federal. Yeah, but let's look at his bookcase. Let's look at his bookcase. All right, I hope I don't see any Make America Great Again on that bookcase. No? All right, just looks like family stuff. Okay. All right, keep on searching, I don't know. Keep on searching NigeriaNews.com, Bob Atundi. Bob Atundi. I just now got it. His name is Bob Atundi. I got it now. What a funny name. What a funny name. This man's literal name from Nigeria is Baba Tunde. And he moves to America and changes it to Bob Atundi. That's funny. That's literally funny. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Oh, the whitewashing. That's funny. I just now caught it. I caught it. Anyway, I'm sorry. Pearson, the Navy Federal spokesperson, declined to comment on Atundi's denial, saying that our members' personal and account information are private and confidential. He sat in the airy living room of the 3-bedroom home last month. Atundi said he was still frustrated by the mortgage denial. He said he submitted complaints to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the federal agency that oversees consumer lending, as well as the Texas state agency, both of which went nowhere. Hearing about the larger racial disparities in Navy Federal's mortgage approvals made him think the credit union was inhibiting veterans and their families from just uplifting themselves, Atundi said. Yeah, if you're living in Texas and you're filing a complaint to the government of Texas about racial discrimination, you think they care? You really think those racist Republicans in Texas actually care about some Nigerian immigrant complaining about racism in Navy Federal? They probably pushed that to the side. They used that as toilet paper. Somebody blew their nose on it. They stomped their cowboy boots over Mr. Babatunde's complaint. And the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has been so underfunded. Honestly, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau should be that one agency that all Americans should rally behind. Make sure every senator votes for more funding for that. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau deserves more funding than the Department of Defense. Facts, because they fight against, predatory loans. They make sure that people are able to, go to college and not get swamped in student loan debt and that sort of stuff. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is actually pretty damn hard. That's actually a dope agency. Yet and still, what do? We fund more and more money to the CIA's black budget and all that sort of stuff. And, they can't, fight for the American consumer to make sure that we're not cheated, that we're not lied to, that our products aren't poisonous, that the loans that we're taking out don't have super high interest rates, that sort of stuff. I don't know. That's just my opinion. Anyway, CNN's analysis doesn't prove that Navy Federal discriminated against any borrowers. but it does show significant disparities in the credit union's approval rates for borrowers of different races, and that it has larger racial gaps than many other large financial institutions. The analysis was based on data collected under the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, which requires more financial institutions to report anonymized information on mortgage applications to the government, including applicants' race. CNN's analysis focused specifically on conventional home purchase mortgages for homes intended to be used for a primary residence and not intended to be used for a business or commercial purpose. CNN only analyzed loan applications that were ultimately approved or denied by lenders, not those that were withdrawn by borrowers before a decision was made. In 2022, according to the data, Navy Federal approved 77.1% of white applicants, 55.8% of Latino applicants, and 48.5% of black applicants. The 28.6 percentage points gap between black and white applicants was by far the largest gap among the 50 financial institutions that originated the most conventional home purchase loans last year, which includes Navy Federal. Okay, so I just want to say this. Some people might say, you know what? The black applicants just weren't credit worthy, or Navy Federal gives out the most total number of black borrowers loans or that sort of stuff, but they decline a lot of them because a lot of black people just don't have the credit or the down payment or the income or the credit history to get approved for loans. Okay, all right, that might be true. That might be true. But why is that systemically in a society where black people have been in the country since its inception, since the inception of America? Black people have been there. Yet and still, we are locked out of wealth that allows our people to be approved for loans at the same rates as other people who just showed up yesterday, unfortunately, or who were there from the very beginning but weren't very nice to us, to still get approval for loans and economic opportunity above us. What does that say about our nation? I think that says a lot about our nation, and that systemic white supremacy has locked black people out of wealth. And this continues, and something needs to be done about it. In comparison, Wells Fargo had a roughly 19.5 percentage point gap between its black and white approval rates. U.S. Bank had a 10-point gap, and Bank of America had a 3.5-point gap. 3.5-point gap. The second largest credit union in the country, State Employees Credit Union, had a 5.4 gap. Navy Federal's racial disparities remain even when comparing only applicants with the same incomes or debt-to-income ratios. The credit union approved 59.3% of applications from black applicants making $140,000 or more, those in the top quarter of applicants by income, and a 59.8% of white applicants making less than $62,000, those in the bottom quarter. Interesting. So black applicants had lower approval rates than those of other racial groups at every income level. Navy Federal Credit Union's loan approval rates for black, Latino, Asian, and white applicants by income in 2022. So here, whites are purple, Asian are blue, Latino green, and black yellow. So 61K or less. Yep, whites still at the top, close to 60%, followed by what? Asians at around 40%, Latinos less than 40, and blacks somewhere around 30 or something like that. All right, 62,000 to 94K. Whites still, once again, at the top, close to 80%. Asians maybe 75, 60 or something like that for Latinos, and blacks around 50. Yeah, and as we see here, $95,000 to $139,000. Whites close to little above 80%. All right. Asians close then. Yeah, it's the same. It's repeating. It's all repeating. You can see the data right there. So CNN's analysis found that Navy Federal had significant tongue twister. CNN's analysis found that Navy Federal had statistically significant racial disparities in its mortgage approval rates while holding constant more than a dozen different variables, including the applicant's income and debt-to-income ratio, the loan amount, the property value, and the neighborhood's socioeconomic makeup. Even among applicants who were identical among all those variables, the analysis found black applicants were more than twice as likely to be denied as white applicants, and Latino applicants were roughly 85% more likely to be denied than white applicants. The analysis did not take applicants' credit scores into account because the public data released under the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act does not include credit scores due to privacy concerns. That means at least part of the racial disparity could possibly be explained by differences in credit scores between white and minority borrowers. Black borrowers, in particular, tend to have lower credit scores, in part due to the impact of historical discrimination and a continuing lack of access to traditional financial institutions in black neighborhoods, according to researchers. The data does, however, include information on the reasons that applicants were denied. Of the Navy Federal applicants from black applicants that were rejected, less than a fourth were listed as being denied because of credit history. Notably, the racial disparities in Navy Federal's approval rates have increased over time. In 2018, the difference between the whites and black approval rates was only 11.5 percentage points, far smaller than the 28.6 percentage point gap in 2022. I think there are a lot of reasons why it might have increased. Of course, as you know, in 2020, everybody went wild when George Floyd got that knee on his neck and the whole world went upside down. So I think a lot of white folks were mad. A lot of white folks were really mad deep down inside. Even though if they were saying Black Lives Matter outside, they were really, really kind of pissed off that, everybody was on code and really, really, really gearing up to fight white supremacy before the movement sort of died down and people moved on to other things. So yeah, if you're some white lone officer looking at Minneapolis burn on Fox News, you might say, "Oh, I can't wait to go to work and deny those blacks those loans." I know somebody did that. I'm betting every penny that rests in my very small and meager bank account that somebody denied a black person a loan just because of what happened to George Floyd. Just because. I know that. I know white people in and out, and I know they did that. Anyway, that's one thing. Another thing I think might have happened is that, a lot of black people probably lost their jobs during COVID-19 because a lot of us don't have those sorts of how can I say this, careers where we could just easily work from home. And a lot of people probably got really wrecked. A lot of people lost their apartments, they got evicted, lost their cars, got their credit wrecked up because they were out of work for so long or totally lost their jobs and still haven't bounced back from COVID. I think that's another reason why. That's just my opinion, though. Anyway, Jose Loya, a UCLA professor who has studied racial gaps in mortgage approvals and reviewed CNN's analysis, called the disparities in Navy Federal's lending alarming. It does surprise me that they're doing significantly worse than their big lenders because of Navy Federal's status as a credit union, he said. Once again, what is a credit union? A credit union is supposed to be for the people, in theory. It is a nonprofit. Meanwhile, Chase, Bank of America, Citibank, all those places, they're supposed to be making profit. But they see making profit is taking those risky loans. Meanwhile, Navy, and by the way, they're not risky loans just because they're black. That's not what I'm saying. But, they do their due diligence. They go through the applications with a fine-tooth comb and they say, "Here you go, sir. You can move into your nice home. You got the money, you got the credit, you got the history. Go on, move in and let's make some money together." Meanwhile, Navy Federal, which is supposed to be for the people and should be even more liberal than those banks, is being hella racist, hella racist. And by the way, all those other big banks, they're racist too because they deny black applicants a lot. But once again, Navy Federal should not be acting like them. It should be the total opposite. Anyway, what may be widening the gap? The decision to approve or deny a mortgage application is largely made by automated underwriting systems, and advocates have been pushing lenders like Navy Federal to improve those systems to reduce racial disparities. In recent years, some banks have changed their underwriting systems to take into account additional data that can reduce those racial disparities, such as including an applicant's history of paying rent and a calculation of their credit worthiness. Pearson, the Navy Federal spokesperson, said rental history was incorporated into the credit union's underwriting process, but did not provide additional details. Some experts pointed out that Navy Federal's member base of service members, veterans, and their families may have a different financial picture than the general public that large banks serve, which could explain some of the racial disparities. The gap between black and white mortgage applicants has widened. Navy Federal Credit Union's loan approval rates for white and black applicants from 2018 to 2022. Here's the data right here. I'm about to cry. Pa, got you. I just got a cough. We already covered that data. Let's jump ahead. In addition, unlike large banks, Navy Federal isn't subject to the Community Reinvestment Act, which encourages lenders to make loans in low and middle income neighborhoods. Interesting. Interesting. You would think that a credit union would be subject to this law of the land, but no, it's only for the large banks. I wonder why. Maybe they think maybe the commercial banks need to be more policed because historically the commercial banks have been the most racist towards black borrowers or people trying to buy homes or get credit from the bank and that sort of stuff. So maybe they're being policed, but why wouldn't the credit unions too? While federal regulators review banks lending under the act, they don't do so for credit unions and other non-bank lenders. Well, they should. That should be changed. Some advocates and banking groups have been calling for years for revisions to the law to credit unions to follow the same rules. Our legislators have given a huge pass to credit unions on the assumption that they're serving and meeting the needs of their members, said Rice, the fair housing advocate. So this is Lisa Rice, the president and CEO of the National Fair Housing Alliance, said that the racial disparities in Navy Federal's lending were concerning. In other cases, racial disparities in mortgage lending have been linked to loan officers helping white borrowers more than black ones, said Sarah Pratt, a lawyer at the law firm Relman Colfax, who previously led the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's civil rights enforcement efforts. So I just want to say this. A lot of the times when white supremacy is in play, sometimes, and I'll even say this, sometimes it's not from white people who are being intentionally racist. But I'll say this. You know how a lot of the times we as black people, we see another black man, you give him the head nod, you say, "What up, brother?" I was in the visa office here in Hungary a few weeks ago. I didn't have internet. I needed to call my lawyer because I still don't have a Hungarian number and that sort of stuff. So this black brother behind me, I knew I could come to him and say, "Hey, man, can you give me some Wi-Fi?" And he said, "Yeah, sure, I got you, man. Hook me up with the Wi-Fi." You get what I'm saying? There's that connectedness that we have as people, especially when they look like us. And I feel like a lot of the times the loan officers, unfortunately, because they're not us, they're going to be looking out for people that look like them. Because Derek sees Bob walk into the office, and I'm not talking about Babatunde, I'm talking about Bob Johnson or something like that. The white waspy man walks in. You get what I'm saying? And he's going to say, "Hey, Bob. Hey, Derek. Hey, man, I saw you at the golf course," or maybe they go to the same church, whatever. And so they're going to be more clicked up than us who come from different communities because America is very segregated. We live on that side, they live on that side, generally. So yeah, they're going to be not intentionally racist sometimes. I'm not letting white supremacists off the hook, or even the vast majority of white people off the hook. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that, they probably just see a lot more of themselves in them, so they extend more humanity and grace to people that look like them. That's one thing. I'm going to just say a particular loan officer might make exceptions or just work harder for some people's loans, such as telling applicants to pay down credit cards or increase their down payment if they're on the edge of getting approved. Pratt said loan officers might give this advice to a white borrower, and with a black borrower, they're less likely to do that. She noted that she had no evidence that Navy Federal employees were doing that, but said the disparities in Navy Federal's approval rates should require a lender to offer justifications for how the disparity occurred. According to federal law, lenders don't have to be intentionally engaging in racism to break fair lending rules. A disparate impact on minorities can also lead to discrimination claims. It's bad business to discriminate because if people are genuinely qualified, as in many cases they are, then lenders are missing the opportunity to make loans, said Pratt. Lenders who look more carefully at these issues can see they're losing business that somebody else is getting. Pearson said that the credit union was proud of the large portion of its loans that went to black borrowers and that more than half of its branches in the U.S. are located in minority communities. As a not-for-profit, member-centric membership organization, we are focused on expanding awareness and access to home ownership across the country, he said. Navy Federal is a trusted financial partner for all of its members and advises each member based on their unique financial needs. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's like corporate talk. Once again, the data doesn't lie. Numbers don't lie. Men lie. Women do. And yeah, what we're seeing over and over again when we look at the statistics, white borrowers come out on top even if all things are held equal. And unfortunately, even other groups are stepping over us. And once again, we need to not have this black, brown, people of color coalition. There is no coalition with people who practice anti-black racism or who stand on the sidelines while anti-black racism exists. We have no allies. We have no friends. The Latinos, the Asians, they are not our friends in the fight against white supremacy. We only have us because we can only trust us. I'm keeping that absolutely real. I thought we were going to lose the House. CNN's analysis found that Navy Federal had larger racial disparities in its approval rates for conventional mortgages than for VA home loans, which each account for about half of the loans that originated last year. VA loans, which are backed by the federal government, are designed to allow veterans to get mortgages that they might not qualify for in the conventional market. But racial disparities still existed among Navy Federal's VA loan business. Last year, Navy Federal approved 84.2% of its white home purchase VA loan applicants, compared with 73.8% of Latino applicants and 71.6% of black applicants. Its black-white approval rate gap was larger than all but one of the 50 lenders that originated the most VA home purchase loans. Like in Navy Federal's conventional business, the racial differences were statistically significant, even when accounting for factors like income, property value, debt to income ratio, and down payment percentage. Ted Spencer, 42, applied for a Navy Federal mortgage in 2019 as he purchased a home in Raleigh, North Carolina. Spencer, who is black, had been banking with Navy Federal since he joined the Navy 2 decades earlier and had good experiences with the credit union. So it was an obvious choice for a loan. He was pre-approved for a VA loan with no down payment. On his first weekend house hunting, Spencer toured a 4-bedroom home in North Raleigh with a woodsy yard big enough for his dog and space for the kids he and his girlfriend would later adopt. We walked through the house and we were both like, yeah, this was the one, he said. Their offer was accepted right away. After Spencer submitted his paperwork to Navy Federal, he ended up waiting weeks. He said he repeatedly emailed, called, and messaged his loan officer without any response. Then finally, he heard back that the mortgage was denied with a letter from the credit union that he showed CNN, citing his credit history and debts. It was pretty much the 11th hour, Spencer said. I really thought we were going to lose the house. But like Otondi, Spencer found another mortgage lender who quickly approved him for a new loan at a lower interest rate than Navy Federal was going to charge him, and he and his girlfriend were able to close on the loan only a week later. Spencer said he never thought the denial had anything to do with his race, and that the data CNN showed him about racial disparities in the credit union's lending practices blew my mind. He said it made him think about family stories he'd heard about his grandfather's experience dealing with redlining as he tried to buy a home after returning from the Korean War. See, this is the thing. A lot of times, we as black men, I know a lot of times people might think, oh, Simon's so quick to call everything racist, but a lot of black men sometimes can realize that, you know what, not everything is about race. Not everything is racist against me, though, white supremacy does exist, but that doesn't mean, every bad thing that happens in my life is because of racism. And that's not how I think at all. I just want to make that clear. I don't blame everything on racism. There have been bad and good things that have happened to me in my life, and it's not because I'm black. And Spencer thought the same way too. He said, maybe I just got denied because I ran off on a credit card when I was 21 or something like that. Or I forgot to pay my cell phone bill for like a whole year one time, and maybe that hit my credit. Who knows? Who knows whatever happened to him? And so, yeah, he got his credit knocked up, but then he eventually got the loan. But then when we see the data and when we see the evidence, then that's when we jump to calling things white supremacist, racism in action, anti-blackness in full force, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I just want to make that very clear for everybody. We are reading these stories and learning about these events that have happened in our history and right now, not to just call everything racist, but to be aware and to inform ourselves so that we know about the world around us. So, going to continue. Some realtors who specialize in serving minority and veteran homebuyers said that Spencer and Otondi's experience of being denied by Navy Federal and then easily approved by another lender wasn't uncommon. If a client calls and says, I was disapproved by Navy Federal, the first thing we say is, let's get you in with another lender, said Anthony Renault, a California-based realtor. In the military community, many people know that Navy Federal is not the best when it comes to mortgages. Maybe also, and this is another theory, maybe Navy Federal wants to spread the wealth. Maybe sometimes in these banks, there's like these backroom deals and stuff like that where Chase says, hey, Navy Federal deny these loans so that we can get the business and that sort of stuff. Maybe. I'm just maybe thinking like that. I'm trying to think positive, and I'm thinking about all situations and things like that. Most likely, no, that's not what's happening. Maybe it is white supremacy in play. But maybe possibly what's really happening is that Chase, Citibank, Bank of America, all the retail banks are calling up the big lenders who give out lots of loans and stuff like that and say, hey, let's get all your premier black clients because we want to make sure that we look good too. Because these other retail banks are denying black people loans and stuff like that. So probably what they do, maybe, I'm just putting out a theory. I don't know if it's true, and it's actually not what I believe. But maybe Chase is like, oh no, if we don't get enough black loans out this year, we're going to look like we're racist and we're going to have the government down our neck. So they call up the back end of Navy Federal and say, hey, send us some good black applicants. And so they say, okay, we got you. And then they deny some black home loan borrowers. They then get a call mysteriously from like a Chase bank loan officer or somewhere else. I don't know. I don't know about all this rich people stuff. I'm broke as hell. But then they call them up and say, hey, we heard you got denied by Navy Federal. Let's do some business. And then they, do it that way. Maybe, because it sounds strange that you would get denied for a loan that probably knocks up your credit, and then you get a call from another bank, because that's what the story said. The guy got a loan for a cheaper rate from another bank, but they probably would have saw on his credit history that he got denied for a loan not that long ago. So then why would he get a cheaper rate? So that's what makes me think there's probably some collusion happening in the story. But that's just a theory. I'm not actually going with that. I'm just putting that out there. Most likely, though, it's because of racism. Because if we still look at the big banks, what do? They deny a lot of black loans. And yeah, Navy Federal denies a lot too. About half. Anyway. Going to continue here. The credit union has previously faced scrutiny over racial disparities. An analysis by the nonprofit news outlet The Markup using 2019 data found that Navy Federal was among the large lenders with the biggest racial gaps in approval rates, and CNN found that the gap has only grown since then. Navy Federal said at the time that the Markup's analysis did not accurately reflect its practices. Navy Federal has also faced legal action over allegations of aggressive lending practices and other banking violations. In 2016, it paid about $28.5 million in redress and fines after the federal government found it had falsely threatened borrowers over debt collection and froze them out of their accounts. Well, that's bad. See, every bank in America has done some bad stuff, man. Grand Prairie, Texas. Nice place. I used to live in Grand Prairie. It's a nice place. Some of the black borrowers denied by Navy Federal said they saw home ownership not just as a financial accomplishment, but as a larger life goal. As an immigrant from Kenya, Atunde said that buying his house felt like living the American dream right there. But after his rejection from Navy Federal, he said he couldn't help but think about other black borrowers who weren't able to get another loan. What about the ones who are denied? What about the ones who now can't get their own dream house? Atunde asked. It's something that's going to affect generations all the way down to their kids. Absolutely. So let's jump back to the top of this text. This was a very interesting story, and let's not ever forget that this needs to change in America. Whether this is backroom financial dealing that's causing these disparities, whether it is actually racism that's happening. We need a more fair America, because the ability to buy a home, live in a home, have some stability creates great outcomes for communities and individuals. And unfortunately, in America, we make everything so centered about money that many people are locked out of that opportunity, and that needs to change. I'm not saying everybody needs to buy a home, because there are some people who want to live a mobile lifestyle, move around, not be tied down and that sort of stuff. But the ability, having the option to buy it, should not only be for the very, very wealthy. I shouldn't have to earn six figures and that sort of stuff, or six figures combined with me and my wife, just to live a decent, stable life with an asset that will grow in value that I can then pass down to my kids. How about we make an America where everybody has access to the American dream of owning a home, and get rid of these credit scores, or redo the credit score system. Make sure that loan applications are fair, and the only people who are getting denied are the people who absolutely do not qualify for the loans, like my broke ass. And yeah, Let's make a better America where even if racism is not the reason these loans are getting denied for black people, that the systemic problems that make black people so economically destitute that after generations in America, we still do not qualify for the basics of owning a home. We should make that changed. My name is Simon Hill. Thanks for watching this video. Peace.